Hello, hello. Yes, in the packet in your little program, it says that I identify myself as an amalgam. And I'm an amalgam of, I'm a respiratory therapist. You probably don't know what that is until you can't breathe, okay? So I'm a respiratory therapist. So I spend my days as a respiratory therapist at Rutgers University, and I spend my nights oftentimes as an anthropologist teaching community college students. I like the anthropology a little bit better. It's not life and death. We get to ponder life and death without participating in life and death. Now, I have to click over there. Now, in true TED Talk style, I'm going to tell you a story. And my story centers on Oaxaca Streetchildren Grassroots. One of the UConn students, Marcos, who is friends with Katie, invited me to come do this talk, believe it or not, last week. And I said, yes, turn up the flame, and I know I can rise to the occasion. I met Marcos in Oaxaca. We worked on a library project at Oaxaca Streetchildren Grassroots. I like to think that at our organization, we actually operationalize education and health as a human right. In good storytelling fashion, I am going to tell you a story of the good guys, the bad guys, and the triumph over evil. Now, the good guys in my story are the children that are serviced by Oaxaca Streetchildren Grassroots. We educate 600 of the poorest kids in the state, actually in the city of Oaxaca. Also, the good guys include their parents, their grandparents, who many of which are illiterate. They do not read or write in Spanish. Yet they value an education, and they know that the only hope for their kids is an education. Now, who's the bad guy, right? Oh, let me go back to the good guys. I have other good guys. I have the volunteers. I have the dedicated educators and professionals that our volunteer organization, which is Oaxaca Streetchildren Grassroots. All of the volunteers, all of the college and university students from the United States, Canada, Europe, and Japan who come every year and volunteer their services with us. Those are the good guys. Well, who's the bad guy? Well, the bad guy we deal with is not a guy. Kind of is a guy. It's a collective guy. And that guy is called poverty. Grinding poverty. And it's not just the grinding poverty. You see, our children often suffer from something known as social discrimination because of their cultural heritage. Most of the kids that we educate are of indigenous heritage from the state of Oaxaca. Now, in order to understand all the moving pieces of Oaxaca Streetchildren Grassroots is to understand the history of the area. Now, it's a beautiful colonial city. I don't know if the little pointer thing works. I'm afraid to hit something. It's a beautiful colonial city. You've got the colonial church on the side, you've got the downtown, which is still laid out in a grid pattern, and you have the historic center, archaeological ruins of Monte Alban outside of the city. It is so important to the World Heritage that UNESCO, that acronym stands for the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, designated Oaxaca, the historic center, and Monte Alban as a World Heritage Site. In other words, it is so important to the global community that it gained this special reputation. For me, the most important piece would be Monte Alban. Now, Monte Alban was settled 1,500 years ago. The Spanish colonial city was settled 400 years ago. Now, within the Spanish colonial city, you see remnants of this heritage in the architecture and the art. But with Monte Alban, the archaeological ruins, they were built 1,500 years ago, and many different indigenous groups have occupied this area over that time. It started with the Olmecs. The Olmecs are gone. Then later on, Monte Alban was occupied by the Zapotecs, the Mixtecs, and then the Zapotecs kicked the Mixtecs out, and the Zapotecs came back. And why is that important? To me, that's the most important piece, because you see the remnants of this indigenous past is ever present in our everyday. In the state of Oaxaca, it is the most indigenous state in the country of Mexico. There are 16 Native American languages spoken in Oaxaca. Many of those people live here in Connecticut. I don't know if you know that. They're in the Northeast coast. They're in New Jersey. They're in New York City. Huge Mixteco population in New York City. We identify them oftentimes as those guys standing in the muster zones, but they're here, and their language at home is their indigenous language. I stumbled upon this teaching English, tutoring English in New Jersey. So anyway, back to Oaxaca Streetchildren Grassroots. The primary languages that we deal with there would be Spanish. Luckily, the children speak Spanish. Not all the parents do. Zapotec, Mixtec, and then there's another primary indigenous language, which is Trique, T-R-I-Q-U-E. Interestingly enough, Oaxaca Streetchildren Grassroots was started because of the Trique people. If there was a social hierarchy in terms of the indigenous peoples of Oaxaca, the Trique would be at the bottom of that ladder. The organization was started in 1996 by a couple by the name of Jody and Howard Bauman. And in 1996, they were frequent visitors to Oaxaca. They would stay in the Zocalo. The Zocalo is the town square where there's roving musicians, lots of restaurants, absolutely beautiful. Now, the interesting thing was that Jody and Harold, they came back and they noticed the same children were always working the Zocalo late into the night. 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, no matter what time they went down there, they saw the kids selling cigarettes, candy, trinkets, shoe shine boys, you name it. They finally befriended a Trique couple that ran a stand in the Zocalo, and they asked them, when did the kids go to school? And they found out they didn't go to school. They were mental health professionals from Minnesota, recently retired, and they were horrified that the kids didn't go to school. And the big question was, well, why don't they go to school? Well, it turned out they found out that school's not free. You need to pay for registration fees. You need to buy uniforms. The kids need shoes. These children didn't have shoes. And when you don't really operate in a cash economy, or the cash you generate is so tiny, there is not enough to pay for the uniforms, the shoes, the books, the backpacks, and everything else that is needed for an education. There we go. So, with this in mind, Jody and Harold started Oaxaca Streetchildren. They started by sponsoring that Trique family, the 3 kids. They paid for the school fees, they bought them uniforms, they bought them shoes, and they sponsored them to go to school. And over time, the organization grew until, that was in 1996 and 1999, the 501(c) that we call Oaxaca Streetchildren in the United States grew an arm. It grew a Mexican arm. We have a Mexican sister organization known as El Centro de Esperanza Infantil, the Center of Hope for Children. And it is in this structure, this dwelling, this beautiful 2-story colonial building that we have in the Historic Center is where the services take place. So now, despite all of that beauty, remember the previous slide? All that beauty, all of that cultural heritage, this is what our kids face. This was taken, I think, a couple summers ago. These are kids that come to our center. These are just shanty towns that are built into the side of a mountain, right? Generally, there's either no electricity or there's one light bulb. If there's no electricity tapped in from the road, people might run a light bulb off of a car battery. There is no running water, okay? No running water. There's a spigot, and water is hauled in. There are no flush toilets. All right, so that's where, now these kids are lucky. They're 20 minutes from El Centro. So what they do is they come to El Centro, and at our center, we have showers, we provide educational services, we have a computer lab, which you'll see in a minute, and they can come and have a hot meal in the middle of the day. So what these kids generally do, we have a shower schedule, so the kids come, whether it's Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, they have a shower in the morning, they go to school, they come back for lunch. They're the lucky ones, they live nearby. Now, for the kids that don't live nearby, these are kids that live in what I call the colonias. These are the outer barrios. Right now, most of our kids, we have hundreds of children. Remember, we educate 600 of the poorest kids in the state of Oaxaca. These are the kids that live in the barrios. And the issue here, see that stove? That's a dirt floor. I don't know if you can see the dirt from that image, but it's a dirt floor. You can have a canister of gas and run a gas stove. Once again, no running water. Over in that far photo, there is a highway that goes by, and the kids can take a bus to school, all right? These structures are just made with corrugated metal and then often corrugated plastic, the wavy plastic. I mean, the storage sheds we buy at Home Depot are much more robust than what a lot of these families live in. But despite the poverty, right? Despite the poverty, these kids get an education if they can come with us, and these families know how important it is. So here we are at Oaxaca Streetchildren Grassroots. There's a sign at the top. We're a dual organization. The money comes in through the American side, and then we send it to Oaxaca for the services to be provided. And what do we give? We have a little girl the first day. Usually the middle to the end of August is an awesome time for students to be there. That's when we give it. In the anthropology world, this is called a giveaway feast, a potlatch, if any of you ever took anthropology. In other words, the goods are amassed. We gather the goods, which include uniforms, school uniform, gym uniform, school shoes, gym shoes, backpacks, books, book supplies, toothpaste, toothbrush, and don't forget the shampoo for lice. Remember where the kids are living. It's an ever-present problem with lice. So that's kind of hard to keep our lice shampoo stock going. But the kids, they wash up and they're pretty good about and they come to us to learn basic hygiene that they may not have known. Remember, these are indigenous families for the most part. Some of these children did not know how to use a fork or a spoon. So they learned how to wash their hands before they eat, after they eat. They learn how to brush their teeth. The president of our Mexican arm is a dentist. Look at the state-of-the-art computer lab. This is one side. We had a $10,000 grant about 2 years ago, and we outfitted the entire room. That's one side of computers. On the other side, we have another bank of computers, and then there's a few other satellite computers. These are the same kids that are climbing those steps in the daytime. Imagine that. No electricity at home, but their parents know how important this is. They want these kids to get out of poverty, and how else, right? You need these technological skills. And this is where the magic happens. There's the dining room, and the dining room is where the children, if they're in the area, can come to us and have a meal in the middle of the day. All right? The problem is our kids on the outside, they may go to a school that's not too close. So we're working on getting more children into the center. When we first started, most of the kids were near in the city center, but now they're branching out. They're a little bit further off. Now, very quick, I will tell you, the topic of this talk was Oaxaca Streetchildren Grassroots, Health Literacy in Action. And the health literacy we provide is embedded in everything we do with the kids. As I said, we teach them about hygiene, that we provide many service learning projects for the families and the kids. We have education for parents to come in and learn about infectious disease. They learn about how to get an influenza vaccine, all types of things to keep people healthy. And last but not least is we need that triumph. Remember that triumph story? We know that we're one of the triumphs is that we have 600 kids in this program. Recently in January, I was in Mexico and I did a program called English for Your Health. And I set it up for either the children or the families that were interested in it. I got some of our kids who are now young adults and they're in university. It was unbelievable. It was the best 2 days I've ever spent down there. These were kids who were climbing those steps, and now they're in their late teens and early 20s. I have one girl who's in her clinical portion, medical school, 2 nurses, an occupational therapist, and someone studying veterinary medicine. So if you ask me, that is the triumph. Thank you.